Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Slate, presented by the Vancouver International Black Film Festival, where we connect you with filmmakers and the stories behind their work. I'm your host, Sam Leger, and today we are thrilled to welcome Aisha Evelyna, a Toronto based actor, writer, and director whose film NOLA, co directed with Natalie Novak Ramplakowski, will be part of the lineup of the Vancouver International Black Film Festival. This festival takes place in person and online, and the NOLA will be available online exclusively. It's from December 13th to 17th, so make sure you grab your tickets at Vancouver International Black Film Festival.com. Now, Aisha is also an award nominated filmmaker whose incredible work spans from indie film, network television, and comedy series. Aisha, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. A pleasure. How are you?
I'm good. I'm getting into the festive spirit. It's cold, but it's not cold in my house. I'm actually under a heated blanket right now, so I'm
Ah,
doing great.
I need one of those. I'm in Montreal and it's really cold here, so I know what's.
It'll change your life, like for real. Like I know it
Mm,
sounds crazy, but I'm like, it will change your life. Because when I'm cold, I'm in a bad mood, which is like, and I can't be in a
mm.
bad mood all winter, you know? So
Yeah, so, I agree 100%. You need to find ways to keep the joy during winter. That's for sure.
yes. And it starts with a heated blanket. Anyway, back to you.
We'll have time for a promo.
Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, we would like to first learn about you, your career, and yeah, so far everything that what you've done. So if you can give us a little intro.
Yeah. So I am, I guess you could say, like sometimes folks say multi-hyphenate filmmaker or like multidisciplinary. So I act, write, and direct, and have produced in the past out of necessity, but also I have produced other people's work as well. I just
Okay.
enjoy making films, based in Toronto, as you noted, and I guess I could say my voice is called to bringing our social understanding, our social empathy, our social attention to marginalized and underrepresented people that make up our society, um, as a way to continue to spread love so that we can find ways to connect to each other because we're all deserving of dignity and kindness. So yeah, that's I would say like
Mm,
what I'm called to when it comes to working in cinema.
okay. Wow. This is a great call. Now I see you have all these three hats on: actor, writer, director. What came first on the
I went to
timeline?
theater school. What came
Okay.
first? I actually, funny enough, like when I was graduating high school, I was like bent on being a doctor, to be honest. And then like just by virtue of I got a scholarship to go to York University for theater because at first I was just like wherever I get in is just where I'll go. And
Okay.
so I had early acceptance to life science at U of T, and then I had acceptance to York University's theater program. And I'd always done plays and stuff in high school, but I never seriously considered it as a career path. But then when I
Okay.
got in and they were willing to give me some money, I went to theater school
Okay.
and I did a couple of years of their acting conservatory. I did not finish though. And so, yeah, basically acting came first. It was just, I started to perform. I've always been a bit of a performer as a kid. And when the opportunity presented itself to go to York, I was just like, yeah, why not? And now we're here.
And now we are here. What a journey.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now, in the filmmaker aspect of it, can you tell us about Nola and yeah, the story itself? What you wanted to tell us?
Yeah. So NOLA is a precursor to a larger feature film project that we also just finished shooting. And so NOLA was co-directed by Natalie, co-directed and co-produced. We're sorry, co. NOLA was co-directed and produced by Natalie and myself.
Yes.
And when it comes to what we wanted to share, going back to for specifically NOLA, going back to what I just said about like being called to sharing the stories of people we don't really think that much of.
Yes.
That was our hope when it came to NOLA. NOLA is the protagonist of the feature film Seahorse that we then went on to make. But as a short film encapsulated in itself, it's just about a woman who is lower on the socioeconomic rungs of society, trying to get by. And we try to just highlight the daily things that people encounter because no one's really thinking about making, well, bear exists, but Funny
Mm.
enough, The Bear came out 2 weeks after we shot NOLA. But anyway, at the time, we were just like, no one's thinking about the people that I worked with for years in restaurants and the people that Natalie worked with for years that were working in service roles, like that a lot of people kind of sometimes look down on, trying to get ahead.
Mm.
And so there's like a little twist where it's like, um, Nola's introduced to somebody from her past that kind of changes the way she sees her life. But basically, we just wanted to put a spotlight on the people that we're not always thinking about, to try and bring empathy to people that are kind of invisible sometimes in society.
You know, when you said that it was like a part of this bigger feature film, in my inside of me, I said, I knew there was a part two. I knew it was. It's a good teaser because it kept me engaged, and I was like, okay, so this cannot finish here. I either need to ask plenty of questions, or there is more to it. So I'm glad
Yeah,
that there will be a longer feature film. Seahorse, you said is the name.
correct. Yes.
Excellent.
So Seahorse, basically NOLA is like the first 10 minutes of the movie in a way. Like
Okay.
we got into the Caribbean Tales Block Incubator and Studio Access program, and basically we were offered the opportunity to make a proof of concept kind of, or we call it the precursor to the bigger vision,
Okay.
of Seahorse. And so it was a way for us to kind of test the creative, test and like further deepen relationships that we would move on to have on the feature film version, um,
Mhm.
and also kind of just like, yeah, it was a test ground, if that makes sense, but also we were
Mhm.
like inspired to make something, and as a way of like helping to gather industry partners as well. Idea being that like with this short, we go to a festival with the short, but then we can also talk about the feature, which kind of helps create a bit of a longer runway for us to like reach people. Because one of the hardest things when it comes to making anything is like reaching audiences, because we're
Yes.
also saturated by media. And so yeah, it's just like the maybe the first 10 minutes or so, like the feature script changed a lot. However, we were just like the central nugget of Seahorse, we figured we could put into a 10-minute short film, and try and get people to, as well, in addition to all these like career endeavors, just
Mhm.
empathize with people on screen.
Great. What was the most challenging part of bringing Nola to life?
Hmm.
Mm.
The most challenging part. What I would say is it's twofold. Obviously, resources are always hard,
Mm.
because I think one of the things that making technology more widely available, even though that's so great, it means that the bar for which what you make without like a big studio behind you has to be higher. Meaning
Yes.
sometimes filmmakers are required, or it's asked of them in a way, if you want to be able to compete, to deliver something that looks really good, and not always having the resources behind you to support you. um, and so I would say that was tough, and I'm still pleased with how we were able to like the story that we were able to create and how we were able to package the film and all of that. Like I'm so pleased. That I think that would be hard. Like that's the harder part, is like being kind of under resourced, because then that means you don't get time for rehearsal or those kinds of
Mhm.
things that would help deepen the creative and deepen the audience's experience of the movie. Sometimes kind of fall to the wayside. So even the rehearsal would have been great. It's like, well, we need a camera, so one of them has to go. You know what I mean? And then you kind of just have to like
Mm.
kill your darlings in a way. So I would say that was tough. And then I would also say, I wouldn't say a challenge, a good challenge though. Um, this film really came together in the edit. Uh, they always say that a film that you create, the film that you write is different than what you shoot, is different than what you edit. Like it
Mhm.
evolves. And I'd say that over the course of editing, we had a very like long editing period on the film. Just because Natalie and I are both busy. Like Natalie's like was is doing her MFA, and
Okay.
so it was a long process, and getting an edit that did justice to what we were hoping to achieve from the script. Um, it was a good challenge. Like we had to work at it. It wasn't just like drag and drop kind of thing. We definitely like played around with it way more than I think I have in the past. Sometimes you write something, you're like, I write it, and then it's like boop, 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 and that's what's on the timeline, and that's what you're watching. We
Yeah.
definitely moved scenes around, those kinds of things, because it created a different experience, when you're watching it. So it wasn't. I
Yes.
wouldn't say. I would say a good challenge. It forced us to like it just also opened the possibilities of what editing can be, for me at least. So that's, I would say, those two things: the edit, and then also like getting the stuff together to shoot it.
You know, I'm so glad that there is this long feature film coming, because one of the questions is you know, it's a short film, so everything that you had to leave out to make this one, if there
Hmm.
is one that you would like to put back in when you see the final, or it's okay that way. You know there will be a long feature film, so it's okay. But
Hmm.
yes, fantastic to know that there is an upcoming project. And so you said you had experience, right, in the working in the kitchen, a high space environment. So that's exactly where you draw inspiration to act in
Yeah,
this movie. Okay.
I would say, um, yeah, I never actually, and this is where it got interesting. When I was when I was initially writing the movie, like when I
Yes.
was writing Seahorse's script, because Seahorse's script came before NOLA, the short film.
Got it.
I was like, I want to be with somebody who is working hard to get by. However, I didn't want them to be an artist, because I was just like, as an artist, I was just kind of like, I want to watch something else. And
Hmm.
that's when, kind of drawing upon my experiences working in like food and beverage restaurant industry, kind of came forward. I never
Yes.
worked as a line cook. However, I was like more of like an administrative, like small format event person that was like really interconnected with all the departments that make a restaurant go. So like you have
Okay.
restaurant management, then you're also talking to the head chef and the kitchen staff. You're also talking. I was like doing tip out calculations for the servers, but I was also sometimes hosting, also taking reservations. So I was kind of like in many ways like a bit of a, I don't want to say a hub, because all of the parts independently are important, but I was definitely like a connective tissue
Connected.
in that environment. And yeah, like when you work in restaurants, you meet a lot of kooky people.
Hmm.
You meet a lot of really different personalities, because at the end of the day, it's entertainment, right? Like people go out to eat
Yes.
food and be entertained. And like when someone comes to serve you, it's like very much so like people facing, and you have to like kind of like smile and like that kind of thing. So um when I think about my experience, it's like more so like me kind of like trying to channel a lot of the people that I spent years getting to know, from getting to the kitchen
Mm.
staff to management staff to people that are serving, and the the very minute ins and outs of what makes a restaurant go, and like what's annoying, what's great. We're all here to make money. And then also like in some ways like this the social like hierarchy that exists within
Hmm.
a restaurant as well. Like a lot of working places just like have that built in, but it's one of those industries where you have to all be willing to work together as a team, which
Yes.
means that the hierarchy should fall away. However, there is a hierarchy, and I was interested in that, especially in spaces where I worked with a lot of men who were in um, managerial roles, who
Hmm.
maybe didn't have the best management skills. So like you
Mm.
can, and like it's one of those industries where you can kind of work from the ground up to like being a busser and get all the way up to being a restaurant owner. However, there are certain soft skills that are not always developed over the course of the process. Like just because
Yeah.
somebody might be a good bartender doesn't mean that they know how to use an Excel sheet, or like balance like your cost report, or like
Mhm.
I think it's called like profit and loss report. So
Yeah.
that became like that was also like what factored into me writing it, was like just thinking about the power dynamics at play and how those dynamics create conflict, uh, and how those dynamics within a kitchen and the restaurant industry speak to the larger world outside.
Wow. Okay, that's where the
She's
inspiration came.
nuanced. We've been with the project for like 5 years, so like it's nuanced because I've been doing it for a long time. So I've been working on the project with Natalie. I've been working on the project with Natalie for a long time, so it's like it's deep because we've had 5 years to deepen. So
So now, talking like about Natalie, right? Because it's co-direct.
mm,
So the process of choosing someone to direct a story that you're so involved with, how that came
mhm.
by.
Well, Natalie is like my first real collaborator.
Okay.
When I made, funny enough, I made a short film called Accidentals alongside Natalie.
Mhm.
And was like, we screened at Real World, and then I think we screened at the either, I think it was the Toronto or Montreal Black Film Festival. And this was back in like 2018. So Natalie directed it and I wrote and starred in that first film. And so we have like a long-standing like creative shorthand as we've moved through the years together. She's worked
Okay.
separately on all kinds of projects and I have as well. So when it came to choosing a collaborator, it was one of those things where it kind of made sense because we had just been working together and had like an intimate creative relationship for a long time. Again, it's just time, you know?
Okay, so time working together, collaborating, so both of you
Hmm.
know the pace in which both work, and
Yeah.
it makes it smoother than to collaborate and to work in a film.
I
Okay.
also think we're very aligned when it comes to creative choices and those kinds of things. Like we
Yeah.
like gravitate towards similar things, if that
Okay.
makes sense. So I also think that helps when it comes to collaborating when you're both like if she were heavy into sci-fi and I were heavy into comma, it might have been difficult. However, we both really enjoy drama and love drama, and I think that's one of the reasons why we were able to collaborate well.
I've encountered co-directors where one is the creative and the other one is the more with the anal
Mhm.
mindset. So between you and Natalie,
I think I think we get stuck on different things. So like
okay.
we in some scenarios like Natalie's more loosey goosey and I'm more like no, it must be this. And I think in other scenarios like she's more like it must be this, where I'm like eh. So I think it like the like it's like I want to say a bit of a yin and yang, if that makes sense, where like we both complement each other in those
Mm,
ways. Like obviously like it's always interesting and interpersonally when you're working with somebody because you have to be a collaborator. But I
yes.
also just think it's forced us in a good way to really get sharp on our collaborative skills, which are soft skills that we will continue to use as we move forward in our careers, both like separately and together.
Mm, mm. That's a great answer. A bit political because you didn't want to say exactly, but it's
It's
fast.
both.
It's both. It's both.
It's both.
Great. If you had one takeaway that you would like the viewers of NOLA to have, like, what would it be?
Hmm. The takeaway?
Hmm.
I was thinking about this. I think the word is inquiry
Mm,
on multiple levels. So on the first level, it's like how you kind of expressed earlier, where you're like, "Oh, there's something more here," and like you lean in and inquire, like, "What's next?" And so from like from like a story movie realm, there's like I want inquiry. I want people to be like, "Oh, what's happening next?" And it's like,
hmm.
"Oh, we've got you. There's a movie." So there's that. But then I also think about the word inquiry from a very story world based position within the world of NOLA, which is to lean in. And I'm always when as a filmmaker, I'm always trying to ask us to question like where we get our opinions, understandings of people
Mm,
from. And so when it's presented to you, my hope is for you to inquire and be like, oh, huh. Like, and to just like to be drawn in and to think more about the people you're seeing on screen, because a lot of the time these people are, unfortunately, for many, invisible. Like, you go to the restaurant,
mhm,
you're not thinking about the busser who is here from a foreign country that hasn't seen his family in 8 months,
mhm,
who's living in a rooming house. You don't think about those people. And so, my hope is to force inquiry, for us to force to like look into the spaces that we're not normally looking, specifically with Nola and Cyrus, the man at the in the movie that she encounters, like inquiry into like what's his story, how did these like what's the nature of the relationship, how did it get this way, like to just I think yeah the biggest word I have is inquiry, like huh, you know, ask us to question.
Great. Hey,
Yeah.
there you have it. Inquiry. So once you see the movie, we need to have this feedback. We want to know the comments. I know Aisha and Natalie for sure they want to hear the feedback from the movie. And definitely, one thing that I would like to know too is your favorite two movies or two movies that you would recommend, like we cannot miss.
That's a good question. Okay.
Mhm.
Favorite two movies you can't miss, movies I'd recommend. Okay. Wow, this is a big question. Okay, you know what? My favorite movie of all time is an animated film, Disney Pixar,
Yes.
Finding Nemo. I feel like some people have seen it, maybe some people haven't. A lot of adults haven't seen it because they're like, I'm an adult, or you haven't seen it, or you haven't rewatched it.
Mm-hmm.
I really think about the art, like it was monumental for so many reasons when it came to the worlds that we create. If you think
Yeah.
about the ocean, we understand like less than 3% of it as like as human beings, as from
True.
a scientific standpoint. So the fact that they were able to create such a wide, wonderful world from like what a lot of us don't understand, I think is really interesting. And then also I think when it comes to like writing skill and storytelling skill, it takes a lot to get a child and an adult to laugh at something. And in the same joke, they're laughing about different things. That's why I
Mm,
always advocate for that movie. And like in the workaday world where like so much is like happening, we're inundated by stuff. If you can sit down, like sometimes it's just like nice to watch something and feel good and giggle, you know? So I would say
mm,
that movie.
okay.
That's one of my favorite movies. And that's so I'm like, rewatch it. You might be pleasantly surprised. Especially at this time when we're all gonna be with families, that kind of thing, like multi-generational, like it's good for kids, it's good for adults, you know what I mean?
Mm, mhm,
But then
mhm.
the more like the hard hitting stuff. Uh, I would say um, one of my favorite movies is Kids um, by a gentleman named Larry Clark.
Mhm.
It's where Rosario Dawson got her start. It was made in 1995. Like Chloe Sevigny got her start as well. And the way in which this person made a film was they used non-actors. At the time, this was like really interesting because no one was really doing that. Like Larry Clark walked so that Sean Baker could run. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Like Sean Baker it like uses like non-actor people study and like that kind of like filmmaking in many ways, at least in like the more I guess like postmodern realm of it
Mhm.
started in around that time when Larry Clark made that film. So I really like it, and it also just like it's just really interesting cinema and like really push the boundaries for like what we are open to watching. Sometimes it's painful to watch
Mhm.
certain things, and it had an interesting commentary about like New York and like the like AIDS epidemic at the time. And so
Mm,
it's one of my favorite films. And then there's so many others. And then like also just Do the Right Thing by Spike Lee. Like that's another one that like is always in the back of my mind. But I feel like at a Black Film Festival, most people have seen that. So, or if you
yeah.
haven't, no shade, go watch it. So I'd say those couple of movies.
Do you see yourself doing an animated movie? Is that a plan of yours in the future?
Well, funny enough, friends of mine wrote this little movie with a talking puppet. It's like,
Okay.
you've ever seen oh gosh, what's it called? It's called Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And in Who Framed Roger
Yes,
Rabbit, it's like
yes.
yeah, yeah. So it's like cartoons and live action, right?
Mhm,
Like cartoons walk among us like people. And so a
mhm,
couple of friends wrote this really fun story about this puppet and like his human friend, kind of like living and hiding because like basically people don't like puppets, and so the puppet has to live away in hiding. But
okay.
um, I think I might have been the perfect person to do it because I love like films that look at the world from a socio-political standpoint, and I also love just goofy, funny, silly stuff. And so it was a perfect marriage. So when you're like, "Is that in my future?" I'm like, "Honestly, they're gonna direct like another Finding Nemo. That's like there's like Finding Nemo, Finding Dory." I'm like, "I'll put my name in the hat for the third one." So I would definitely do it because I think it's just so much fun. Like, I feel like
Mm,
filmmaking is so difficult, very rewarding because there's nothing like writing something and then seeing it on a screen and you're like, "Wow, this happened because we got so many people together." But
mhm.
because it's, like, hard, I'm like, "I am the cake of life. I am not an engineer. I am not a doctor. Those are meat and potatoes. I'm the cake of life." Meaning, I would like to have a nice time being cake. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I'm
Artists
writing that
artists are
down.
the cake. Artists are the things that we enjoy and savor, and they're
Yeah.
like art is the sweetness of life, I think, or
Yes.
artistry rather is the sweetness of life. Otherwise, like, what's it all for? And everyone has their like role or their calling or their purpose when it comes to society, like healing
Mhm,
people or building bridges or like there's all kinds of things where people feel called to do it. But I think
mhm.
about art, I'm like, I have to experience joy while doing it in order to share that joy, even if it's a sad story.
Yes.
You know
Mhm,
what I
mhm.
mean?
Yes,
So
yes.
that's where I'm coming from. I'm a cupcake.
There
I'm
you
a
have it.
cupcake.
You're okay. No, I love this comparison between artists and cakes and like desserts. Definitely, it stimulates imagination. So that's exactly what movies, what film theater. That's exactly what it does, and it's definitely necessary for society. I would like to know if you had a message for those upcoming filmmakers, those that have everything written down but haven't had the step of, okay, let me start shooting, or they actually were wondering about, I don't know, gear, about how to start. What advice would you have for them?
If your dream involves you, it's too small. If you dream to
Mm,
make a feature film, or you dream to make a short film, a 2-minute film, a 1-minute film, you have to enlist in, you have to, like, filmmaking requires us to live in community, to work in community. It is one of the biggest team working efforts that I can think of, where people slog and work for months to realize something that lasts 2 hours on a screen,
mm,
or like 10 minutes on a screen. And so the advice is, in some ways, if you're writing a script or you're dreaming a script, get out of your own way. If you, when you feel like it's ready to share it to somebody you'd like to work with,
mm,
and
mm,
then
mm,
ask for their thoughts. Find your community, find the people that you're going to be working with, like how I found Natalie over a decade
mhm,
ago. And in some ways, I think it sounds mean, but like, get over yourself. Sometimes, like, it is hard to share art because art is vulnerable, but like,
yes.
that's what the job requires in
Mhm,
some regards, because it's art. We
mm,
respond to vulnerability because we see ourselves in that. And that can be challenging to like share a part of yourself, even if you're not making a story about a trauma you experienced 10 years ago and you're making a story about a talking puppet. Like, I worked on this puppet movie, and like, when it comes out, I'm going to be like, I'm going to feel a little vulnerable, being like, oh gosh, I hope people respond to it in the way that I hope they do, because like, I put myself into this. And so it's, get over yourself, finish writing the script, keep yourself accountable, keep consistent, and then share it with people who you want to work with. And all you need, it's like a boat. You put people in your boat. You're rowing this way. You just get a person. You're rowing down a river, and you see a person on the shore, and it's like, hey, do you want to make a movie? They're like, yeah. In the boat, it
yes.
starts with you, but by the end of getting to the end of the river, getting to the destination, your boat is full of people. And
Mhm,
so you have to extend toward community, I think, is like the biggest piece of advice. Find your co-creators. And like, people are very wound up in like networking up, meaning like trying to, and like, that's important too, like trying to work with people that are ahead of you on the journey. And I think that's important too, because then there's like a mentorship capacity of working with somebody and like learning from them. But
yes.
Issa Rae said this like years ago, it's important to network across. The people that you look
Mm,
around that are also your peers at this present moment, as they move up, so will you. So
mhm.
investing in those relationships with people who are your current colleagues is also important. So that's what I would say. That's my advice. Get over yourself and go share your thing.
Get over yourself. Go share your thing. Get a community. That's there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is all. Thank you very much, Aisha, for joining us today and for being part of the show. I definitely enjoyed this interview and learning more about NOLA. It's definitely an experience. I would like to invite everyone to go watch it at the Vancouver International Black Film Festival from December 13 to 17. Make sure you purchase your ticket online at VancouverInternationalBlackFilmFestival.com. With that being said, well, Aisha, thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thanks so much. This was a great chat. I like, you had such great poignant questions. You're a great interviewer, so I appreciate it.